It's Mother's Day again, so I pulled out my Rosie the Riveter shirt. I think I mentioned before, my grandmother on my mom's side was actually a Rosie the Riveter during World War II here in Nebraska, and she helped build a lot of the different ships and tanks and whatever else that, ended up going off to be in, the Pacific and the European theaters during World War II. Don't ask me which one she specifically worked on. That's not necessarily something I know. But now we got to talk about Mother's Day for Bleach. So in regards to a bunch of the different mothers in Bleach, there's some that are, of course, much more prominent in regards to ones that are like, Misaki and Uryu's mother and grandmother, and a few other ones here and there that are pretty prominent, and then there's ones that are much less prominent, give or take. So let's kind of start with just, again, these aren't really in much of a particular order. They're just the order that I put them down. So first off, we have Misaki Kurosaki, who is, of course, the mother of Ichigo, Karin, and Yuzu. We kind of find out about her fairly early on in the series. We find out within the first couple of episodes, well, pretty much within the first episode, we find out that she is dead. Initially we think, oh, she died of the anime mother disease that happens and is a plague on the shonen manga, on the shonen anime. But then we find out several episodes later, or several chapters later, that she was actually killed by a hollow. And of course, we know that via the flashback that we get with Ichigo, he thinks that it's his fault. For the longest time, pretty much since it happened, he thought that it was his fault that she got killed. And of course, we find out much, much later in the story, very recently in the anime, in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, like within the last two episodes of the series so far, we of course find out that no, she, you were not the reason she died. She was protecting you, and according to Ishin, she should have been able to handle Grand Fisher just fine. But because of the, Yuha Bak awakening right on that day and drawing in all of this power, it took away her power, so she didn't have any of her Quincy powers at that point in time. And that, so she wasn't able to defend herself, and she spent her last moments protecting her son. Unfortunately, Ichigo does not learn about this until 10 years later, or whatever the case is, technically 9 years later, I guess. For a good chunk of his life, he lives with that guilt. But of course, through other instances throughout the story, we of course, when Ichigo faces off against Grand Fisher, Fisher tries to use Misaki's visage and voice as a lure for Ichigo and to guilt Ichigo and mess with him, which I'm like, okay, you get points on the tactics of psycho warfare there. You get points on that. And, Ichigo is actually able to, he's kind of able to face some of that past, that demon that's there literally standing in front of him, giving him using the visage of Ichigo's mother. So we don't really get, too much else there. We do know that from anything that we've seen in the flashbacks with Misaki, that she adored all three of her children and her husband, and she wanted the best for them, and she wanted them to all be happy and everything. And we do see the effect of losing that, the effect that happened of losing her throughout the course of their lives, which losing your mother when you're that young is a very traumatic thing to deal with, regardless of whether or not they were a good parent or a bad parent or a mediocre parent. It is something that is very hard to deal with. That's the trope in shonen manga a lot of the times, is that, oh, the mother is either dead or not there, or whatever the case may be, or they died when they were very young, like what happened with Sanji and Nami and Usopp in One Piece. Probably a couple of the other Straw Hats to a degree as well, and Robin as well. Where they lose their mother very young. It's not a One Piece Mother's Day thing, sorry. But yeah, in Bleach, so we see Misaki, but we also get during the flashback where we actually get to see, the Everything But the Rain flashback and the Thousand Year Blood War arc. We finally do get to see that, no, she was very strong. She was a Quincy. She was very capable. And she used her last bit of power that she had to defend her son from Grand Fisher. And, that puts her pretty high up there, I'd say, in regards to top tier mom in that regard. And she was always very encouraging of Ichigo and his sisters and everything. And slight tangent, but I will point something out that I have watched all 4 of the Bleach anime movies that they have, the Memories of Nobody and Diamond Dust Rebellion and the other 2. In Diamond Dust Rebellion, there's a whole lot that's going on with Toshiro. That story's a bit lackluster, but they do have a good scene where they have Ichigo talking with Toshiro, and Ichigo's talking about like how, when he lost his mom and everything, and how he just like took that burden on himself, and then he finally realized, because of having his dad and his sisters around, that he did not need to have that burden there all the time, that was not only his burden to carry, that he should not wallow in that doubt. And I think now with everything that just happened in the Thousand Year Blood War arc in the anime, yes, I've read the manga as well, but now Ichigo can start to like get a little better feeling for that, for how he wants to actually, handle that grief a little bit more. Moving on, we have, moving on to the Ishida family, we have Izumi Ishida, who is Ryuken's mother. We only see her for, I think, like 2 chapters throughout the course of the manga, and it's only very recently, in the last couple of episodes in the anime that we finally got to see her. She is very much the strict matriarch of this very well-to-do family in regards to her and Soken and such, and raising Ryuken, and to a degree raising Misaki as well, and intending to, of course, have Misaki marry Ryuken for the pure-blooded Quincy's, blah, 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 blah. But we do see that she does very much care for Ryuken. She does love her son, and I'm quite certain that however much she was around Uryu, she probably loved Uryu as well. Not that we ever really get any indication of the fact that they would have met, although I would assume they did. But we never get a status update on whether or not Izumi is still alive or not. We didn't even get a name for her until the anime, I think. A full-on name for her beyond finally getting it in the anime recently. Because I don't think they named her in the original manga when the chapters were coming out. She was just Ryuken's mother. But she, as I said, she's this very strict matriarch of this Quincy family, wanting to continue the line on down. She gets very angry about finding out that, Misaki went and fought against a Hollow and saved a Soul Reaper in regards to what happened with Ishin and, the White Hollow, and all of that. And also we saw how very defensive she got when Misaki, when the Hollow Hole started to appear in Misaki, that she referred to Misaki as a thing, showing how far she, the instant Misaki was no longer this pure Quincy type of thing that she wanted to marry her son to, she didn't see Misaki quite as being, I guess, human at that point in time, I guess. So that kind of shows where her priorities lied. She still loved her son. She still didn't want him to be hurt. She probably still ended up being okay with like him marrying Katagiri. And if, when I get to Katagiri in a moment, probably was somewhat more reluctant about it, but she's like, well, it's the best option that we have at the moment, because there's not like we can find any other, pure-blooded female Quincy's that are within the appropriate age group for you to marry, type of a thing. And one thing that we see in the anime that I don't remember if this was in the manga or not, if it was, I don't remember. We see that Izumi has a scar on one of her ankles, and that looks like the scar that was left by a Hollow. And I know that some people came up with the theory that maybe at some point in time after she gave birth to Ryukin, that she ended up being attacked by a hollow, and it scarred her and somewhat infected her. Probably not the exact same way that happened with Misaki, but it still like tainted her in her mind, and that's why her and Soken never had any more children. And that's why Ryukin was an only child. And because she didn't want to like pass on that, you know, she didn't want to have any like tainted children, I guess would have been the way to put that. But yeah, we don't know if she's still alive or not. Some of these ones we at least know if they're alive or not. We don't know if she is. Next up, we have Kane Katagiri. And Katagiri is, of course, Uryu's mother, Ryukin's wife. She is a mixed blood Quincy, as they refer to it. And she was a maid within the Ishida household, and then she eventually married Ryukin after everything happened with Misaki and all of that. And they, you know, they had Uryu, and she loved Uryu, and Ryukin did love his wife very much. That is very evident in the bits that we see. But we know that, well, actually, side note, we know that Katagiri ended up dying because of what happened with Yuha, the same way that like Misaki ended up dying, except that Katagiri went into like a coma and then eventually died that way because her body just shut down. Soken did not seem to be affected by what happened with Yuha Bach, that he was a pureblood Quincy, and the Ashwaulan or whatever wasn't affected by him. So maybe Uryu or Ryukin's mother, maybe Izumi, was affected by it, and she died during that time frame as well. Or at the very least, it affected her, and it made her weaker, and it made her die. But I don't know. That's never explained. Although that would line up pretty well with canon, in all honesty, if that was the case. We technically got a slight hint of Uryu's mother way back during the Bount arc, which, yes, I know the Bount arc is not canon. I am aware of this. Yes, I admit it dragged on, but overall I didn't mind it too much when I was watching through the anime. But what we see, Uryu in a flashback with his mom, and she's just like, has dark hair and is crying. And then, of course, we meet Katagiri later on, and she has dark hair and she's crying, as a lot of people point out. We know that Ryukin pulled out like this chunk of weird silver out of her, and that is what he gave Uryu to help end up, a bow tip or an arrow tip that he gave to Uryu during the battle against Yuha. And Uryu used that in order to like stall out Yuha's powers for long enough for Ichigo to attack. So it's a little bit like Katagiri getting a little bit of revenge on the man that kind of ended her life. So a little bit there. It's like, yeah, you caused this to be made, and now I'm going to use it to destroy you, type of a thing. So yeah. Next up, we have Orihime and Sora's mother, which I mentioned when I did the Brothers' Day video that earlier this month, that Sora, once he was old enough, he like left their home and he took Orihime with him, and then he raised her after that. I did not mention this then because I hadn't quite checked it, but it is supposed to be that Orihime and Sora, that their parents were a drunken father and a prostitute mother. So they always argued and beat their children, and that's why as soon as Sora was old enough, he left, because he felt that his parents could kill Orihime. So as soon as he was old enough, he took her and he left, and then he raised her. Probably, I have no idea. We never get an answer on what's going on with Orihime's parents, but they don't sound like nice people. Not that being a prostitute makes you a bad person. Let me be clear on that. But just the way that they're depicted and the child abuse stuff that they talk about, that's the bad part. Next up, we have Chad. Chad's mother, we pretty much know very little about Chad's parents. We know that one of them was obviously of like Hispanic descent, because that's the side that his grandfather comes from. And then that would be the side where he has his connection to his grandfather. And then on the other side, I think he's supposed to be of like Japanese descent as well, considering, his name. And they end up, we know that both of his parents died, and that's why he went and lived with his grandfather for quite a while, and then he eventually went back to Japan. Um, so we don't really know that much about Chad's mom. We know that she passed. Again, we don't know anything else. And then we have two that are much more recent mothers to be added onto this list. We have Orihime Inoue, technically Orihime Kurosaki at this point in time, because she's married to Ichigo, and they of course have Kazui. And we saw Orihime a little bit in the flash forward and the epilogue type of a thing, and then a little bit into the the new chapter that we haven't seen anything else of yet. We saw her a little bit there. And of course, her and Ichigo got married, and they have Kazui, and Kazui has Soul Reaper powers as well, and he has, Kon as his little friend, has his friend, and all that other stuff. Orihime seems to be a little bit more of like the homebody wife, and probably making a lot of strange food combinations for her husband and son to eat, and father and sisters-in-law whenever they come over to visit. So there's that. And then we also have Rukia as a mother to Ichika. And Ichika is very much her parents' child. But Rukia as a mom just kind of seems to be a little bit of like, oh, my child beat up someone that insulted them. Good. She can handle humans. Is like the little bit of an interaction we get there. I don't even know if we ever saw, I don't know if we've even seen Rukia and Ichika in the same panel at this point in time. But we have that because it would be Ichika. Technically, it would be Ichika Ibarai, because she would have Renji's last name. But there's not really too much else there. It's just fun bit. Ichika's cute. We'll see whatever happens there. Then we have Ikumi Unagiya, who is Ichigo's boss / big sister type figure type of a thing, I guess would be a way of putting it. It's kind of like the role that she kind of plays a little bit. She is her son Kaoru does not like Ichigo. He gives him like the stink eye every time he sees him, I guess. And Ikumi will go from being like this, ready to like beat Ichigo's head in to get him sense, and then as soon as her son shows up, she's like, "Oh, sweetie, can I help you with anything?" And I'm just like, whiplash, lady. You're gonna give yourself whiplash. But I like her. She, kind of knocks some sense into Ichigo with stuff that's going on at the beginning of, the not the last season, well, the last season of the original anime. She kind of knocks some sense into him there. And then I guess she knocks a little bit of sense into him or something like that when everything happens, when he returns from the Soul Society and dealing with, the Soul Palace and everything. She's there. But we don't really get too much else with her. I don't even think we get an update on her in the future. Well, her Odd Jobs business is probably still going, because I think we see that like Hiyori is like wearing a shirt that has Unagiya on it, so maybe she went and worked for her, a shirt or a hat or something. So maybe she went to go work for her. So there's that. We don't really see anything else about her, but she seems at least like a fun mom. Then we move into some Soul Society mothers. So, we have Shinakane Iba, who is the mother of Tetsuzaimon Iba. Iba is, of course, he's currently, in the manga, he is currently the captain of Squad 7, I think. That's Squad 7 or Squad 9. I can never remember. I want to say it's 7, but don't quote me on that one. It's 7 or 9. One of the two. 7 of 9. Star Wars. Star Trek. No. Um, but what we see, so we get fairly acquainted with Tetsuzaimon throughout the course of the actual series and stuff, and we found out during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc and during we found out during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc and during like the cover page that Kubo drew for that showed like all the captains and the lieutenants, or the majority of the captains and their lieutenants at that point in time. And we saw that Rose's mom, or Rose's lieutenant, was actually Iba's mom. So Iba kind of comes from like a lineage of that, I guess, that like he probably trained under his mother for a while. He may have been part of Squad 3 at some point in time, but I don't think so. I think he was part of Squad 11 and then ended up in the squad that he ended up eventually becoming the captain of. But we see her, and she seems to be a very well put together, like very refined looking older lady. And she also seems to be like able to like put Rose in his place at times. Which I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what he needs in a lieutenant. That applies. That works. So there's that. We have no idea about any of her powers, what any of her, Bonkai or Shikai are, or anything like that. We know her name and we know who her son was. And I don't know when that was revealed entirely what her name was. Then we have entering the Omaida family, which is probably going to get talked about in most of these episodes because I already talked about it in the brothers episode, and I'm going to talk, and then I'll do now, and then the sisters episode, and then the Father's Day episode when those roll around. So we have Marika Omaida, who is the mother of Marihime, Marujuro Suba, Marecchio, and Mario. She is the mother of all four of them. And again, she's part of the Omaida family, so she's from a very well-to-do family in regards to having a lot of money, because I think they're like merchants or something. And, we only really get a little bit of her in the series. I don't even know if she appears, she like appears in the manga at times in like regards to like the little side chapters that like Kubo drew, and then they work those into the anime at times. I like her hair color. That's about all I can say. There's not really anything else that we ever see about her. So beyond the fact that she's the mother of this brood of four Omaidas, out of all of them, Marecchio seems to be the most successful, because he is the one that is a Soul Reaper. And then we have Nanao Issei's mother, which we never got a name on her. I guess that could possibly change as we get closer to that section in the anime where we deal with, Nanao and Shusui's flashback. That's a possibility there. We might end up getting a name for her then, as in like Kubo may release some information about that or something, but at the moment we don't have a name for her. We know that she is deceased. We know that she comes from the Issei family, and that she at one point in time was kind of like the head of the Issei family, that she had married Shunsui's brother a long time ago. And then eventually she got pregnant and she had Nanao, and unfortunately Shunsui's brother died at some point in that time frame because of the supposed curse on the Issei family, that any man that marries into the Issei family will die young. I don't know what qualifies for young in the Soul Society, but okay. But we know that Nanao's mother did try to raise her and try to take care of her and everything as best she could. And we also know that she took the sacred mirror sword thing or whatever that was part of the Issei family, and gave that to Shutsui to keep safe and everything, so that way hopefully the curse would not affect Nanao. And we know that that did lead to her being executed, because she had just, up and, lost one of the sacred treasures of the Soul Society. And so they punished her for that. I'm like, well, that kind of seems like a stupid reason to punish someone, but okay. It was her family's sword. It was her sword. Um, Laws. I don't know. The Soul Society has weird laws. Not that that's not news to anybody. But we know that then eventually Shunsui does give this to Nanao. We know that the hat and the hairpins and the kimono that Shunsui wears, that the hairpins were from, one was from his brother and one was from his sister-in-law from Nanao's mom. We know that the kimono itself is from Nanao's mom, and the hat, was the hat from one of them, or was the hat just something that Shunsui had anyway? I don't know. But we know that his hairpin, that the hairpins and that the kimono mean quite a bit to Shunsui, because of who they were given to him by. So we know that Nanao, knows about her mother's history, about her family's history and everything. It's not like it would have been hidden who her, it's not like she didn't know who her mother was. It just took her a while to figure out who Shunsui was, and then by the time she figured it out, she was already part of, like, Squad 11. 6, 8? I don't remember. Some of them I know off the top of my head. Other ones I'm like, what squad were they in? Well, now she's part of Squad 1. Now is the lieutenant of Squad 1. One of the lieutenants. And I got 2 moms left on this list. First off, we have Yuichi Shibata's mom, and he's the bird boy that I mentioned in the Brother's Day episode video. Yuichi's mother was killed by, I think it was it Screecher? I think that was the hollow that was going after him and his mom. And Screecher's original human form had been a murderer, and it was either, and then he, became the hollow, and then the hollow then, I think, went after Yuichi's mother, targeted her, killed her, and then he told Yuichi that, oh, if you can evade me for, like, a certain amount of time, I'll, do what I can to bring your mom back, and he turned Yuichi into a bird, which I'm assuming it was just, like, put Yuichi's soul into a bird. Why a hollow has that power, I don't know. But, that's why, Yuichi ended up with Chad, and why eventually, they were able to, destroy, I do believe that was Screecher. They were able to destroy him, and then eventually, Yuichi is able to move on, and he goes into the afterlife where, of course, he meets his, kind of like foster parents and foster brother, and we never get an update on whether or not he was able to find his mom or not. I kind of hope that he did, and that maybe she was welcomed into the family, but we don't know. And then the last one that I have, because I believe I've gone through all the rest of them, is Yukio's mother. So part of the backstory that we get for Yukio of the Fullbringers, he has like some German last name, but I don't remember how to pronounce it, and I didn't write it down, so I don't care. And it's supposed to be that his parents are very, very rich, but very neglectful of him. So that's why he ends up making like these cyber, video game versions of his parents that actually very much dote on him and care for him. So that's what he does. That of course via his powers, he's able to actually go into the game and interact with them and everything. But like his actual parents, his actual mother is actually very neglectful to him from what we understand. But there's not really too much else there. His parents are dead, and that's why he's in charge of the company. That's where a lot of the money for Excalibur execution, whatever, comes from, is from him. So yeah, there's that. Not really anything else there. I will throw in the fact that, like, when it comes to Jackie's mom, Jackie Tristan's mom, that she is also dead, that she was killed by the, cartel or whatever that also killed her father and her brother and everything. So there's that. That's not a fun thing, but that's another thing I can point out. I think I hit on all of the different mothers that are major enough in the series. I think think so. I don't think I missed any. If I did, comment. Politely comment. So yeah, this will go up on Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there that are watching this, or, you know, remind you, tell you to tell your mom happy Mother's Day. Or, you know, the mother figure in your life, however that works out. I'm going to be getting my mom flowers, and I got her a card and a necklace. Cheap necklace. She likes costume jewelry. What can I say? And it's easy to buy. So yeah, that'll be that. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a nice rest of your day, and a happy Mother's Day to all the mothers that are out there, or all the mother figures that are out there if you don't actually have children of your own. So, bye.